Hello, solopreneurs. I am always inspired by the Olympics, aren't you? I love watching these athletes and hearing their stories and seeing the things that they're doing. And yes, there's always a little bit of drama. Just this week, there's been a lot of drama. But to see someone's dedication, that they're willing to train at that level and to give up so many things on a personal level to achieve their dreams. It's inspiring. And of course, some athletes are at the top of their game, and that's clear. There is no denying that. But others are really at the beginning of their career, or they're just having a bad day. And you can tell it's like someone who's been the gold medalist, and he's just starting to age out. So he doesn't medal at all. Or the person who should have won the gold but falls on the ice. You never know what's going to happen. So recently I saw this quote and I just thought it was perfect for this week in the middle of the Olympics. So many athletes want to be unbeatable, but the only way you can become unbeatable is to be beaten every way possible. Isn't that true? It's like the ability to overcome only comes out if we've lost, if we've failed, if we've been beaten. But too often, we're in the same boat. We want to succeed, and when there's a need, we want clients to come to us first, but too often it doesn't happen that way, does it? We do a bad job, we fail, we lose clients, we struggle to meet expectations, just like Olympian athletes. But truly to succeed, we have to fail every way possible, just like them. So if you think about it, failure isn't personal. It's just part of the game. So welcome to the Solopreneur Life Podcast. I'm Kathryn Aragon, your host, and here at Solopreneur Life, our mission is to help solopreneurs and freelancers just like you grow and launch a six-figure business without overwhelm or burnout. Here you're going to learn the skills, habits, and mindsets that you need to build a successful business that's actually fun to run. Today we are talking about how to regroup and recover when things don't go your way. But before we dive in, I want you to take a minute to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of the Solopreneur Life Podcast. So the first thing we're going to talk about is having a bad day. What does that mean? What does it look like? And we all know how it feels. We all have them. But, especially right now, I think this is poignant. Look back at the last couple of years. It's like, it's not just a bad day, is it? It's a couple of bad years. The jokes of the year from hell, that kind of vibe. It's laughable. It's so bad. But the thing to remember when you're having a bad day as a solopreneur is that you're not alone. It is so hard to start from zero and build momentum and keep that energy going. The majority of businesses actually never make it. So the fact that you are launching your solopreneur business and you're committed to making it run, you are a minority. The fact that you're not treating it as a hobby, that you're seriously trying to grow your skills and build this business and make it work. If you've gone beyond the first year, you're in a minority. You're already winning. But that doesn't mean it's easy, does it? I've been at this for a lot of years, and it never gets easy. It never gets easier overall. Because why? Because as I ascend in my success, as I build my business, I have new challenges. I have new things I have to figure out and overcome. And if you think about it, isn't that what the athletes are doing? Back when I was young, and I'm going to date myself here, when we watched the Olympics, the girls would just glide on one leg with their arms outstretched, and we were like, oh, how beautiful. Wasn't that wonderful? Guys would just do a leap, and that was considered extraordinary. And then along comes one athlete who does an axel, And then somebody adds turns and somebody else adds another and another. And today we've got women who are doing skills that men didn't do when I was young. It's incredible the way the bar keeps rising. And the truth is it rises for us too. Sometimes by choice, we decide to go after a higher level for our business. But sometimes it's just, this is now becoming the industry standard. And if we don't level up, we kind of lose ground. Everything's moving forward. We have to move forward with it. Imagine, I think it was just today, the news from the Olympic Committee, the woman who won the women's figure skating said she actually didn't have those difficult high bar skills in her routine. So she was actually in shock that she won the gold because she didn't have all those intricate she didn't have a high difficulty score, in other words. She actually had to focus on perfection. So she chose a totally different way of putting together a routine. I think she would have been happy with third place. Instead, she got gold, and she was absolutely in shock, as was everyone around her. Now, we play this same kind of a game. You can go for difficulty. You can go for skill. You can go for whatever you want. Why? Because you're the CEO of your company, and you get to call the shots. You get to decide what the strategy is. But no matter what that strategy is, no matter how you decide to play the game, you are going to fail. You are going to have bad days. You are going to have bad years. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I've had horrible years. And then I've recovered and I've been on an upward trajectory again. You know, the ups and downs of what we do it's so similar to what the athletes do in their training and their attempts to develop and become Olympians. So let's look at what we do, right? As solopreneurs, you are always going against the grain. You are never following the pack. You're not thinking like an employee. You're not trying to get hired by a company full time. You're trying to maintain control of your own life, of your own career. But you're always competing against people who are possibly better, possibly more experienced, with advantages that you don't have. Now, I'm going to pull, you know my story if you've been listening for any length of time, but when I started my business, I had good prospects. I could have easily jumped to the top of the pack. But what happened? In the very first year of this was my second launch. In this very first year, I had a spinal cord injury that literally put me in bed for 4 years. I was in the hospital for a week from that. And when I came back, I had to be fed. I couldn't move my arms at all. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't even be upright. I couldn't use a wheelchair because being upright meant I lost what tiny bit of function I had left in my legs. So could I go to events? Could I network? Could I go and beef up my skills? No, none of that was possible. So whatever advantage I may have started out with immediately was lost. I've run into a lot of other disadvantages that kind of surprised me, I guess, and I don't know why, but the fact that I'm a woman actually is a disadvantage. The fact that I'm an older woman, that's doubly disadvantaged. But see, throughout my journey, I've had all kinds of things come along that could be perceived as setbacks, could be perceived as bad days, bad months, bad years. I've had weeks-long medical treatments that I had to go out of the country to get. I've had cancer. I've had COVID. I've had emergency surgery just 5 weeks ago. Sometimes I'm just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I do get overlooked. I did get forgotten, all because I'm not visible like some other people are, or I don't look the right way, or I don't speak the right language. All of this is normal. I tell you this not for sympathy, but to reassure you that you are not alone. Whatever your disadvantage, whatever holds you back, you're not alone. That's why we have to come to your expectations. What does all of this start with? If you want to regroup and recover, We have to start with your expectations. And that's where mindset comes in. Mindset is such a huge piece of the puzzle. Most people overlook it altogether. They believe, well, I have this amazing skill. And I'm just going to tell you this. This is not bragging. I have always been like the number one writer among my peer group. I have always been the best. That was just, for me, I just assumed, well, I'm that good. I should be able to easily start my business, right? And maybe you have felt the same way. I'm good at this, and I'm good enough to make it work, so I'm determined to make it work. Well, that's a wonderful belief, and it's a wonderful confidence to have in yourself. But I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's not enough to succeed as a business, because a business is much bigger than the one product that you have to offer. And when I say product, I mean your skill, I mean your talent, I mean your service. Whatever you're offering, whatever you're selling, that's your product. And your product, having a product does not mean you're going to make money. That's the truth. And I think because we get into this as freelancers, as solopreneurs, we don't always understand the business side of things. I know I didn't. And that's a huge gap that it leaves us feeling frustrated, angry, inadequate, fearful. You know that pit in your stomach when you lose a good client and you think, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay the bills? Do you know how many times I've felt that? So many times throughout the years. But I've also learned that with the right mindset, I can manage this. You see, all of these negative feelings, frustration, anger, inadequacy, self-hatred, a lot of people struggle with that, which I'm going to be honest, I don't understand that. And I don't want you to deal with that. Don't blame yourself. Don't immediately assume that there's something wrong with you, because there's not. This is part of the game. And if you're going to be a top athlete, if you're going to be a top business person, if you're going to win at this game, you've got to be prepared for falls and setbacks and losses. See, this negative mindset, all of these negative feelings that immediately come to the surface when you fail, they're signals that you're not meeting your own expectations for yourself. What that's telling you is you have set wrong expectations that need to be corrected. Your mindset is off. Now, we can be harsh taskmasters. Sometimes we can be super kind to other people, but we're really hard on ourselves. We can bully ourselves for falling short. We can be our own worst enemy. I know some people who sabotage themselves. The very thing that they've been dreaming about is in their hand. The very thing that could solve their situation and actually give them enough money to survive, it's being offered to them and they turn it away because they don't feel worthy on some level, or they need to punish themselves or something. I don't know. It's a mindset thing. It's an expectations thing. And sometimes we can hurt ourselves by leaning too far into these negative feelings. So you have to reset your expectations. So let's look at this quote again. So many athletes want to be unbeatable, but the only way you can become unbeatable is to be beaten in every way possible. Listen, you are the athlete in this. So many freelancers want to be unbeatable. So many solopreneurs want to be unbeatable. You want to win the game. But the only way you can win is to lose in every way imaginable. That is the honest truth, and I can personally attest to this. I have lost in so many ways. So let's start with, let's do a teardown here and look at that quote very carefully. We're going to start with what it means to be unbeatable. When we think of the word unbeatable, you always win. You always perform at your best, like you don't have bad days. You know everything you need to know. You always have the right words to say. People respect and admire you. I could go on and on and on. We have so many ideas, so many visions, so many mental pictures of what it means to be unbeatable, don't we? but it's not realistic. I mean, do you know anybody who fits that description, who you would determine that, oh, they're unbeatable? No, even Muhammad Ali lost occasionally. Everybody loses occasionally. Now, I'll tell you why my ability to overcome this not being unbeatable is from an experience I had in college. At my university, I had a professor who he was a PhD in American literature. He was one of the top professors. We all loved him. You know, all of us students liked hanging out with him, and he would actually invite us over to his house for parties and get-togethers and stuff, just because he enjoyed us also. I mean, very successful man. And one time someone asked him a question, and he thought for a minute, and he just shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. And that stopped me in my tracks. You would think that wouldn't be earth-shattering, but it kind of was, because this guy was at the top of his game. The very top. He was an elite. And yet he wasn't afraid to say, I don't know something. He understood, I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to BS people if I don't. It said there's no shame in being human. Now that's what I want you to understand. It's not an earth-shattering revelation, but it's something we all need to remember. There is no one who's unbeatable. No one, even the people who are at the top of their game, will lose. There was one athlete, he was a snowboarder. I don't remember this sport exactly, but he has been the reigning champion like most of his life. But he's just getting to a point where there are younger guys who can outperform him. He was coming hoping to get one last medal, and he didn't get on the stand at all. But he walked off with a smile on his face because this was his last Olympics, and he knew it. He didn't medal, and that was okay because he gets this. Nobody's unbeatable. All of us are going to suffer in some way as we pursue our dreams. Now, let's look at what it means to be a failure. And as I thought about this, I actually just came up with two things. Now, with that long list of what it means to be unbeatable, compare that to what it means to be a failure. You get beat, you fall short. I guess I could add one more. You throw in the towel. To me, that's the failure. Not that somebody beats you, not that you lose the job, not that a client fires you. All of us experience that. Even those A-game competitors. Even the people who you think, oh, they have it all together, they must be so fantastic. They get let go, or they decide to quit. They fire their client because they understand already this isn't a good fit. I can't give you my A-game because something is off. But do they ever throw in the towel on their business? No. Now, I'm going to be honest right now. I have had moments where I felt like throwing in the towel. Yes, there was one time I was having a real hard time. It felt like I was getting overlooked all the time. And instead of getting better gigs, I was getting it's like the gigs were getting smaller and smaller and less important and less impressive. It was this downward trend. And at the same time, my website had been hacked and I couldn't figure out how to solve that problem. I mean, that was a whole nother problem. And I literally was like, so do I just need to go get a job? What's going on here? Listen, you are going to have moments like that. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means you feel like throwing in the towel, but that's the failure. If you were to give in to that feeling, instead of fighting for the comeback, then you're a failure. But ultimately, there's something we need to remember about failure. This guy who I just told you about, the longtime Olympian who has a whole probably shelf full of gold medals, who didn't medal at all. When he goes home, do you think he's really throwing in the towel? Just because this is his last Olympics, is he giving up? Probably not. He's probably going to become someone who does judging, does commentating on other competitions. He may be a coach. It's not like he's ending everything. He's ending this phase of what he's been doing. He's no longer going to be the competitor who's, a 40-year-old competing against 20-year-olds? Like, that's going to work. You many times have to evolve your business, but that's not a failure. That's you fighting back. That's you doing a comeback. That's you restarting so that you can try something else and fix whatever is going on. That's not a failure. But even if you did fail, let's say one client, you fail with a client. We're not throwing in the towel, but you experienced a failure. You didn't get an important gig, or you got it and they had to let you go because you just couldn't cut it. What does that say about you? Nothing. Not a single thing. Failure isn't personal. Failure is a moment in time. That's it. It teaches you something, hopefully. It reveals a weakness, and now you know where to focus your attention. You thought maybe that, my writing skill, it's amazing. My knowledge of social media, no one can beat me. Well, maybe we uncover a weakness and what's something you're not that great at, and you realize, but for me to turn that into money, for me to monetize that and build a strong business, I've got to shore up this weakness. I know I did that. This was my first launch, and I was trying to figure out how to get clients, and I was really bad at it. I had no idea where clients were. I got a sales letter in the mail, and I thought, I can rewrite this. So I did. I sat down and I rewrote it, and I went to the local business, knocked on their door, asked to speak to the owner, and handed him my rewrite, and I got hired. I got paid for that letter. Now, that was my first ever thing. And it sent me through the roof. I was so excited that I actually made good money as a solopreneur. But did that really work? Was I actually good at getting clients? Not at all. I was on one phone call with a guy, and apparently my excitement and my eagerness bled through my voice, and it made him not trust me. To him, it made me sound like a beginner. And what did I do? Did I throw in the towel? No, that was a massive failure. I mean, it was like, gosh, I'm bad at sales. I got to do something about this. So what did I do? I went to the local bookstore and I bought a shelf full of sales books. Now, I didn't understand everything I read. I wasn't able to apply a lot of it because a lot of those books were actually applying to B2B salespeople, like professional salespeople in an enterprise company. But guess what? A few years ago, I got hired by a sales company to manage their content for them. Could I have done that if I hadn't tried to shore up this weakness of mine? That weakness, once it was revealed, I did my best to fill it. It did make a difference. I did begin getting better at selling myself and getting clients, but it also got me a really cushy gig that I enjoyed and that I learned a lot from. Your failures are not personal. Your failures are not forever. They are moments. And you can always learn something. You can always fill the gaps and strengthen your skills. You may not be the best option today, but you could be in another moment. The trick is to get in the right mindset so you can regroup and recover. Now, Jonathan, this is a topic that you and I love. Expectations, managing your emotions in those moments, and figuring out how to move forward in spite of these things. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to add?
Yeah, this is, we in our lifetime we've had, and in our marriage particularly, we've had a lot of opportunity to, and it's been an honor to speak into people's lives. Mm-hmm. Because of our roles, there have been people who have looked to us for some counsel, and even part of your desire to create Solopreneur Life came out of this very natural coaching style that you have.
Yeah, we're essentially life coaches, and we've been doing that for 36 years.
Yeah. I don't remember how many years. And so I like what you said, because a lot of what is packed into here is essentially life hacks, because the remembering that you're not alone, that failure is normal.
It's a moment.
It's bad days are normal. These are things that are not in your control, and when you get caught up in what I can't control, that's what leads to the frustration, the disappointment, the desire to quit.
One of the things I've observed, and I said this, but I didn't lean into it, is when you feel frustration, when you start catching yourself getting angry, that's a big red flag that you have a wrong expectation. And you really need to dive in and explore it.
Right. And I was thinking even like in the whole rushing skating incident
debacle
that occurred. And then, then just the silver or the bronze medalist at 17 was ready to quit because the disappointment, because of expectations weren't met. Other people didn't live up to the expectation or the standard that she had. And that led to the disappointment and the frustration. And that's very normal to feel when things are out of your control, to just want to give up. So the key is to remember what is in my control.
That's a good point.
And then to learn and grow. Because, when we come up against resistance, there's two ways to look at it. One is, this is not a good direction to expend a lot of energy on. I'm not going, this is a waste of my energy. And then I redirect. But the other is to recognize that resistance makes you stronger. If you're lifting weights and you don't put any added weight on the bar, you're never going to get any stronger. You reach a point, then you add more weight. You got to create more resistance. So pushing yourself to that point, even if at the end of the day you realize, okay, I pushed here long enough, but now I need to go over here to the left.
Yes. So
but now you're stronger.
Yes. Pivoting. So, that moment I felt like throwing in the towel. It didn't end my business, but it did send me back to the drawing board. And I actually stopped blogging at that moment. It was up until that point, I had been blogging once a week. I had been doing, all the stuff. But I realized my business plan may not be good enough. If I'm moving backwards and not forwards, I need to revamp my strategy. So I went back to the drawing board. I did a lot of thought, actually a couple of years worth of thought. What do I really want to build here? Because sometimes that resetting your mindset, resetting your expectations takes time. So we're not giving you I'm having a bad day, here's how to have a better day tomorrow. Because really it takes more than just, I'm going to paste on a smile and pretend I'm happy. You can't do that, and you know that. Nobody wants to be told, well, just be happy. Just stop complaining. That's not what this is about.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll hear people say, you just got to have a positive attitude.
Yeah, or just get over it.
And positive attitude is a huge element. I mean, if you don't have a positive attitude, if you don't have the I can mentality. But positive attitude makes up for a lot. But consistency, staying at it, not letting those disappointments define you. These are the things in the mindset that are so key to what you teach and to what you have done and implemented. Because with each setback that you've encountered, instead of seeing it as a setback, you say, okay, well, what can I do to overcome this? What is left to me? What do I have control of?
Right, especially that moment 6 months after my back surgery. And I had been told that whatever you didn't recover at 6 months, you would never recover. And I was flat on my back with no functionality.
Right.
And I had 2 weeks where I did nothing. I was just sad for 2 weeks. It was like, my life is over. That's your feeling when something that dramatic knocks you down. And it doesn't have to be that big. You can feel like it's that big of a deal, regardless of what's knocking you down. But I was sad for 2 weeks, and then it was like, gosh, I don't want to live my life feeling this. I want to get over it. And I did have to revamp my business because it became very, very clear that this was not temporary. I was going to have to come up with a different kind of strategy. What everybody else is told to do to grow a business from zero, I couldn't necessarily do. So I had to start over. And Jonathan, how many times have I come to you with a pad of paper and I say, look at this, I think I can do this.
Right. Because you're constantly thinking, you're constantly strategizing. And it's not wishful thinking. It's not, sometimes people get accused of, follow through with something.
Someone called me a Pollyanna the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because sure, I'm an optimist, and sure, I am always going to try to make the best out of any bad situation. But I'm not whitewashing the bad. The reality is the reality. You don't have to, being a Pollyanna doesn't mean that you're ignoring
the reality.
The
right.
reality.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what you were saying about expectations, because expectations you can have, there are several kinds you can have. You can have appropriate expectations, you can have realistic expectations, but you can also have unrealistic expectations, and you can have inappropriate expectations.
And those are the ones, the unrealistic and inappropriate will kill you every time.
And the key element to the how do you determine which is an appropriate or a realistic one is whether it's in your control or not.
Yes.
The moment you define what's in my control, you can identify which expectations need to go. Because if it's out of my control, then that expectation is gone. So you hit that point where you were like, okay, after 6 months, you were like, oh, if this is all there is, okay, but if that is outside of my control, what is in my control? Mm-hmm. Well, I can revamp, I can pivot, I can set up the world that is my bedroom and my bed mm-hmm. to where it brings me as much joy as possible. I have control over this space. And then as your world did get bigger and you did recover further than you expected, then that was bonus. That was exciting. You could rejoice instead of the misery that you create when you focus on what you can't have. This is actually something that you mentioned earlier that I wanted to speak to, which was, the always seeing what someone else is doing, and comparing yourself to others is a really dangerous game to play because theirs is a different situation. But it's good to be aware of the practices and what's general and what's working out there. But then really, I'm not competing against them. I'm competing against myself, aren't I?
Right. The comparison game is a dangerous place to go. It will make you feel less than. It always will. And a part of it is because you're not really seeing the truth behind the facade that they put in social media and out in the public. I could tell you all kinds of stories about me that would make you think I am unbeatable. But I want to be more transparent than that. I want you to see behind the curtain a little bit and see where I struggle and see what I've had to overcome. And I'm going to be honest, it was hard for me to get to a place where I could talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because for me to get clients, I had to appear unbeatable, didn't I?
Right, but this is where it's, you go back to the consistency, the doing. Okay, I may not even be able to see the progress I'm making, but I'm staying at it and I'm doing what I believe in. I'm doing what I can control. I can keep putting myself out there. I can keep, and this happened to you a lot. Mm-hmm. You kept doing that blog. It didn't look like anybody even reading. And then you'd get this, I was reading your blog and it made me think that you're the person that I need for what I'm doing. And it led to those connections. I was thinking there's another couple that we know of that recently came into what could be a really lucrative, be right moment, right time situation. And it's real easy to then say, well, am I really that much better than anybody else, or was I just in the right place at the right time? However, when they found themselves in that right place at the right time, they had the evidence to back up that they deserved to be there, didn't they?
Yeah. So, Tiger Woods is an example of someone who everyone thought he hadn't paid his dues because he was so young and at the top of his game. But what they were failing to understand is the guy had been playing and training since he was like 2. Since he could walk, he'd been playing golf. So, yes, he paid dues. It just looked different from anyone else. And it's ridiculous to play that comparison game. You are going to be on a different journey from me, from Jonathan, from anybody else in your circles.
Yeah, the difference between the winners and the losers isn't necessarily always talent. Mm-hmm. It's those that stay in the game long enough for the opportunity to arise.
That's right.
Even
and knowing how to create opportunities.
And creating the opportunity, making yourself available. It's kind of, I think of, we just had the Super Bowl, and so football's on my mind. But I'm thinking about some of these great plays that make the cover of Sports Illustrated or whatever. That that may have been one catch that ended up winning the game, and that person may have not been given the ball the entire game. But he was constantly, the whole game, never giving up on trying to make an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then when the opportunity did arise, he was in the right place. Instead of going, well, you know what, they're never going to throw the ball to me. They've got me double teamed. I'm just going to give up.
It's like the little kid in the outfield in T-ball. And it's like the ball never comes my way. And he starts chasing butterflies and throwing his, glove around. And you see the kid out there just entertaining himself.
Right.
What if the ball did come? He's not ready. He's not ready.
Yeah.
You have to get your mindset in the right place. And then you have to make sure you're ready. And that's how you recover. That's how you regroup.
And this is that interesting balance, because the expectation, if I'm in that little kid in the outfield, I don't have any control over whether the ball is going to come my way. But what I do have control over is whether I'm going to be ready if the ball comes my way. And, but you said another thing that I wanted to come back to, and that was, you talked about fear. Mm-hmm. And, fear of failure also oftentimes paralyzes, but fear of success. Mm-hmm. Sometimes because how will this change my life if this really happens?
Yeah.
And it does, because sometimes success means even some of those close relationships that you thought were really close, they may actually fade away because they are the ones who can't handle your success.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you have to lose relationships, but there may be some people for whom it is difficult on their end to manage your success. Obviously, yes, you shouldn't, become a different person and cut people off because now you're beyond them. That's not the point. But sometimes fear of success, the fear of the change it's going to bring. But the root word there is fear, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And we can be afraid for a lot of different reasons. We've got the fear that my life will change, the fear that I'll actually do the thing that I said I wanted to do. I mean, because from the time I was teeny tiny, I wanted to write books. And I put it on after those 6 months, and I realized my life might be shorter than I hoped. I made a bucket list. And on that bucket list was, I've got to write my book. So it became a very high priority for me to make sure I did that one thing before I died. And it was the weirdest experience when I finally did. I published my book. I actually published a couple of I wrote books for clients. I actually made it a thing. I was very proud of that. But I had this gaping hole in my life because that desire had been fulfilled. And it was like, now what? That's been my driving goal my entire life. So now what do I pursue? And again, that was just another moment I had to stop and regroup and think, okay, now what? Now what am I going to do with myself? What's my next goal? And again, so you failed. What are you going to do now? That's what matters, not that moment of failure. What matters is what comes next.
You mentioned Ali, and that even, he's dubbed the greatest of all time. And he lost 5 times. 56 wins, pretty impressive, but he still lost 5 times. And his first loss came to Joe Frazier, and it was just, nobody could believe it. Even he was kind of shocked. And he said at the end, I didn't give it away. Joe earned it. But then what happened? He came back and he beat Joe 2 more times. He learned from what he had done. He figured out Joe's boxing strategy, and he figured out how to overcome it. And that's what really made Ali the greatest. It wasn't that he never lost. It was that after a lose, he would come back better, stronger. And that's kind of what you're trying to say, is that failures, that failure is not an option. No, failure actually
is a reality.
Mm-hmm. But how you handle the failure.
That's the test.
That's the difference.
Yes. So let's say this quote again. And I want you to just remember this. I want you to put it on your mirror or on your monitor where you see it on a daily basis. So many people want to be unbeatable. But the only way to become unbeatable is to be beaten every way possible. So embrace those moments. Embrace failure. It will make you better. I promise you that. And if you want help getting through those moments, you are in the right place, because that's what I'm here for. My mission is to help you overcome those challenges and actually build a business and a life that you love. Now, right now, you can join the hub at solopreneurlife.com/hub. That's the best place to be right now, and I'm going to let you in on a secret that nobody else knows. If you are thinking about joining, join now, because in April, you will be grandfathered into something much bigger and much more exciting. That will cost more. So if you are on the fence, I'm not going to give away what it is, but something big is coming down the pike, and I want you to be involved. So join us now. solopreneurlife.com/join hub. This is where you need to be. And to get all the learning you need to help you just up-level your game every which way, to make it harder to fail, to make it better to be unbeatable, easier to be unbeatable, you need to come to Solo Summit in April. That you can join. Register for that at solopreneurlife.com/Solo Summit. And I hope to see you there. In the meantime, go ahead and subscribe to the Solopreneur Life Podcast. We're here every week, most weeks, unless I'm in the hospital or traveling. And I really, really want to be here for you. But you can only get all this goodness into your life if you're here. So, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Until then, stay awesome.